Wim Stocks is the CEO of WorldGaming. WorldGaming is a company that Cineplex owns in Canada. He's actually one of the founders of WorldGaming, and he's the general manager. And he's got a really interesting and provocative view on this sector. So I'm going to introduce you to Wim.
Yeah, good evening, everybody. Thank you, Alex, for inviting me. As you can probably tell by looking at me, I've been around a while. And most importantly, for the purpose of this evening, I've been around in the gaming business for as long as there's been a gaming business. I've been involved with companies like Atari. I've been involved with GT Interactive. None of you are probably old enough to remember GT Interactive, but cornered the market, really started the market around first-person shooters, Doom, Quake, Duke Nukem, Unreal. I see some heads nodding. Those are gangster old school games, and that was part of my realm. But we're going to talk about as big as gaming has gotten. Oh, thank you for that. Yeah, thank you. Should I be flipping in now? Thank you. So as big as gaming has gotten, I think we're going to touch on both gaming and esports. Gaming is in 2019, if I'm not mistaken, going to be an $80 billion a year business. But esports is just a slice of that. Esports is on track to be about $1 billion in 2019. So you can see esports is just a sliver of what gaming's all about, yet it is changing the world in so many ways. It's changing what gaming is. It's changing what engagement is. It's changing what media, sports, culture, and even lifestyle is all about. So making that distinction, esports is a big part of the future of gaming, and we're just really getting started. I know that my life changed dramatically when it went from parents coming up to me and saying, "You're destroying my children by playing. Your companies are publishing games that are addictive, and they're destroying my children's lives," to now coming up to me saying, "How can my son be the next ninja?" So this space has arrived. The space is here, and we're thrilled to be a part of it in Canada and in North America. I entitled my how do you talk about esports in 5 minutes? Thanks, Alex, for the nice, concise little slot you gave me here. But this will be a stage setter for the other discussions coming up. My thought was to give you all 10 takeaways around the theme that you know more about esports than you may think. So let me dive right into it. First of all, if you're tracking what's happening in esports, you'll know that a lot of it is starting to mirror what's happening in traditional sports. The pro leagues, the NBA, the NFL, the NHL, Premier League, those models are being mirrored on the esports side. Overwatch League, company owns the Vancouver Titans, which is just finished number 2 in the Overwatch League. Everybody, that's a big for the first year. That's a big round of applause for Enthusiast Gaming. But other League of Legends is a franchise model. NBA 2K is a franchise model. Call of Duty, which also Julia's company, Enthusiast Gaming, owns the Seattle franchise for Call of Duty. These are all franchise models that look an awful lot like the traditional sports leagues. They have drafts, they have combines, they have preseasons, they have regular seasons, they have postseasons, they have championships, whereas before these franchise models existed, it was rather nomadic. A team could pick up and play anywhere in the world. These structures have helped clarify so much for what esports is and how these pro models are really helping everybody, both media, brands, audiences, understand what esports is all about. So a really important thing, and if you understand the NBA, you understand where esports is headed at least from a franchising model. I think this is a more youthful audience than I'm normally speaking to, so I think probably many people already have contemporized their thinking about who a gamer is. It's no longer kids sitting in basements eating Cheetos. It is all about making millions of dollars if you're a good gamer, being recruited by top colleges in the United States and Canada if you're a good esports player to play for a collegiate team. It's about developing your persona, The average gamer, the average age of a gamer now is 35 years old. The average age of a esports enthusiast is 29. So these are not youthful. If you're a player, you probably are on the younger side because of the just a physiological need to be young and have the ultimate in terms of reaction time and skill and mindset. But by and large, the audiences that are following esports and gaming are much older than you might immediately think. AC Nielsen, probably one of the top research companies in the world, said that if you're a brand trying to affiliate with esports, or if you're trying to affiliate with the millennials and Gen Zs that follow esports, there's no better way to do it than esports. There's countless examples of how this is done. The one thing that you've got to know, and I think most people in this room understand this as marketers, that you got to do it in an authentic way. This is an industry and an audience that's been built from the ground up. They're not going to tolerate any sort of inauthenticity or insincerity or anything that falls short of altruism. So very important point. AC Nielsen has countless studies on the right ways and the best ways to integrate brands with esports. So more to come on all that. If you don't know Twitch, I think Alex even mentioned it. If you don't know Twitch, you should look into it. Twitch is the HBO, the NBC, the ABC, the TSN, the Rogers, the Comcast of esports. If you're watching other people play games, you're doing it on Twitch. You're doing it online via streaming service. The cool thing about Twitch is that it has completely disintermediated broadcast. Anybody can be a broadcaster on Twitch. All you have to do is download a little API, mount your camera on your computer, and start uploading content, and you're a broadcaster on Twitch. It's changing the world in so many different ways. It is a very unique viewing experience. If you're watching, let's say, if you're watching an NHL game on TSN or an NBA game on TSN, you're probably sitting on your couch, sitting back, having a beer. When you're watching on Twitch, it's a completely different experience. You're leaning in, you're on your computer, you're chatting, you're emoting, it's a far more engaged experience than if you're sitting on your couch watching a traditional sports game. Adam Silver probably said it best. He said that while he'd give up the polish of, he loves Twitch broadcast, number one, he would give up the polish of a NBA broadcast in exchange for the engagement that he would get with NBA broadcast being on Twitch. So it's a very, if you don't know about Twitch, please, and you want to get involved in esports, please tune in. The great news about Twitch is that they've had a pretty solid run as in the pole position around streaming gaming content and esports content. But there are other platforms now coming up. Huya, which is part of Tencent, went public in North America last year for about $700 million. They are now a competitor to Twitch. Facebook Gaming is coming on big with live streaming. YouTube has announced a live streaming service. Other services like Caffeine, which just raised $200 million from Fox. Another streaming platform, Mixer, which is now part of Microsoft, as well, a big part of the streaming culture. So again, Twitch has led the charge, owned by Amazon now, but others coming in the fray, and that's good. It's great news for people who are generating content. There is now competition for content, and while a lot of this has been free, it's going to be start to be paid for. And really, okay, so I'm telling you, time's up. I'm going to go fast. If you haven't been to an esports event, you got to go to a live event. You've never seen passion and engagement like you will when you see a live event. Go to a big pro event, go to an amateur event, go to a bar event. You'll see behavior like you've never seen from fans in your life. Don't ever F with the community. And I think everybody's nodding their head. They know what I mean. I don't have to go into this. But there was a prime example just this weekend, last week, of what happened when the Hearthstone player was on his stream and held up a pro Hong Kong sign. Activision Blizzard, the publisher of Hearthstone, they banned the player from playing again. The Hearthstone community hated that, and millions of players dropped their Hearthstone's games and dropped their Hearthstone accounts as a result. So that was effing with the community by a publisher who should know a lot more and a lot better about what to do in a circumstance like that. However, they recovered nicely. Great example, primary example of what it means to to F with the community, and that's something you don't want to do. I talk about this an awful lot, and this is maybe a little unfortunate phrasing that I use, but there are really two mainstreams. If you're in the traditional mainstream, you, by and large, do not see the new mainstream. The new mainstream are those who consume Twitch, who are the millennials and Gen Zs. They've never had a cable subscription. They don't watch television. They don't go to movies. They don't read magazines or newspapers. They are largely online when they're consuming their entertainment. And when they're online, they're playing video games. And if they're not playing video games, they're watching video games. So this new mainstream, they're starting to intersect now with the Overwatch League championships that took place 2 weekends ago in Philadelphia. ESPN is starting to broadcast those, just as Twitch is. So these mainstreams are now starting to cross and to intersect, but by and large, up until this point, they've been very, very separate, and why most people in the traditional mainstream don't know a thing about esports and gaming. Brands, we do a lot of this, test and learn. This is as scary as it might be for a brand to get involved in esports, there are so many ways to test and learn, so many different opportunities between teams and content and players and events where you can integrate and try. This was one of our events where KitKat, we just threw some KitKat, this was a Madden event, we had KitKat candy up on the bench. We got some great response as a result of purely, that's very sort of wasn't in your face, it was very nominal sorts of positioning, but nonetheless, those are the kinds of things, small steps will help you get a much larger strategy for your brand and integrating into esports. Content is the new sponsor. We just saw the Wendy's thing. If that isn't a great example of a content piece as a sponsorship, you read perfectly, Alex. That was a great, and the whole purpose of this slide. Some of the biggest brands in the world are involved in esports. Some of those are referenced above, and I'm just wondering, just yesterday, Mercedes published 5 reasons why they're in esports, and I'll read them to you quickly. The first is esports are definitely sports. Number 2 is esports is a growing market. Number 3 is the esports audience is an attractive, aspirational, affluent audience. Contemporary future thinking and looking, the average age, as I mentioned earlier, is a consumer and a fan is 29 years old. The reach is vast and global. And finally, which is fascinating to me, esports has a positive impact on the image of their brand. This is Mercedes-Benz, a luxury brand. You would not think that they would find any sort of value of being involved in esports. Those of us who are on the inside, and I think others in the luxury brand space are starting to get it now. Louis Vuitton was just announced as the primary sponsor for League of Legends Championship. Their trophy now travels in a Louis Vuitton trunk. So another really cool thing. Two bonus pieces before I leave you. Sorry for the rushed. What you may not know is Canada is one of the now leaders in esports in the very short 2 years. In 2016, when we started under the Cineplex umbrella, we've been around for 10 years, but our tenure with Cineplex was just 3 years ago. When we ran our first Call of Duty event, we couldn't get the media to pick up the phone to call us back about we were running a North American championship for Call of Duty. The sentiment was, well, why would we care about kids sitting in their basement that are now sitting in a theater to have a championship event? As you can tell, 3 years later, 2 years later, things have changed dramatically. There are in Vancouver and in Toronto, Enthusiast Gaming, elite team in the professional ranks. The other team here is Toronto Defiant, Overactive Media, that also owns a big League of Legends franchise based in Europe. So all of a sudden, it wasn't all of a sudden, but it feels like in the last 2 years, Canada has really stepped up and become a global leader in the esports realm. And the last point of this, as I mentioned earlier, esports really is changing the world. I don't just say it anymore. I believe it, and I think you all will as well.
Yeah, so absolutely. Thank you so much. So for those of you that have not been to a TechTO or MarketingTO, we have this like crazy format, which is 5 minutes, and I could listen to Wim speak for a lot longer than that, but thank you for adhering to and I'm going to take 2 quick questions from the audience. So I'm going to take 2 questions. Who has a question for Wim, WorldGaming? Question.
Oh.
Okay, so I will ask one. So the Blizzard.
Over here.
The Blizzard, do you have a question? Yeah.
For those of you who don't know Wim, I've worked with him a couple times. I just want to say he's the godfather of the esports. And everyone leaving this room should forever now say that.
Bow. Yeah. So, thank you. So, why don't you give us, I mean, the controversy with Blizzard was, it was everywhere. And at a time where there was an NBA boy, there was a bunch of things that were happening. What's the play there? I mean, was it...
Well, there's no question you're between a rock and a hard place. Certainly, they have to denounce this player. Well, there are also rules of behavior when you're in events, and you're instructed as a player not to do those kinds of things. Yet he did. Here we are, a country, North American free speech is
Peaceful boycott.
well, yeah,
Peaceful protest, right?
But
Sure.
at the same time, Blizzard makes a ton of money in China. So I think in retrospect, they probably should have backed free speech over China. It would have served them better.
Yeah.
The NBA did that in a slightly different way, but
Kind of.
But
yeah.
I think the point is they were between a rock and a hard place. There's no question they had to make a decision, and it was
The cost
it was tough.
and the headline that I read was the cost and compromise of doing business in China right now, and you have to sort of weigh the two. But I think it's interesting as your industry changes and sort of tipping that in. I want to thank you, Wim, for speaking. Anyone, we're going to have a networking break, so if you think of something, you can go to Wim directly. He is the godfather of gaming. We're so pleased and honored that he was here today to give us his view. Thank you very much. Thank you so much. And this is his reach out.